And welcome back to the Mad Sopranos Men show. We're your hosts, Chris Brodhead and Michael Dennis. Apologies to Matthew Weiner. We are the most autistic analysis show of The Sopranos on the internet. We're also the most autistic Mad Men analysis show on the internet because we review both shows one episode at a time. This week, we have season 3, episode 6. Over on The Sopranos, that's going to be University. Broadcast date April 1st, 2001. And on Mad Men, a guy walks into an advertising agency September 20th, 2009. And Chris, we have our first guest here today, and it's not Matthew Weiner. It's not Matthew Weiner, but that's okay.
It's not Matt Weiner, but he's still pretty awesome. Someday, Christian, you might be Matt Weiner.
Yeah,
Christian,
you're giving me a bar to live up to, so it's great.
Yeah.
High.
Would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself, sir? You and I hardly know each other, so I would love to know a little bit more.
Sure, yeah. I mean, what better time than now? My name is Christian Graham. I'm a filmmaker and writer out of Philadelphia. Recently made a science fiction comedy with my writing partner, Higher Grounds, which you can find publicly now.
Good.
I showed you, Chris. Yeah, I was glad to go back and forth on that. We share a lot of our own kind of demented hangups on like The Simpsons and Seinfeld. So I was glad that you kind of like caught a lot of that shared dementia in that too. But
this entire show is shared dementia.
Yeah.
That's the entire point of this.
I was grateful to be able to take part in neurally diverging with both of you. Yeah. That's about me. Oh yeah. So how I came to Sopranos and Mad Men, I was very embarrassingly late to both of those. I somehow did Mad Men before Sopranos and only really got to Sopranos years ago.
Okay,
yeah. But obviously very well worth the wait. And I knew about the sort of like creative lineage of both of the shows, of how like Matthew Weiner kind of like started on one and kind of like went to lead the other. And yeah, obviously they're just both so kind of like writer forward shows. It's kind of like the first, if you can sort of count like as a precursor to both of them being a kind of like a Twin Peaks or Prisoners thing, of like that being the first kind of step of like cinematic prestige. But yeah, I mean, Sopranos obviously marks its like the first of its like own generation and kind of like normalized it in a much greater way. And coming to media consumption from specifically film rather than specifically TV, I think that's just like it made those two kind of efforts resonate with for me a lot more.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool, man. So Chris and I started kind of watching Mad Men right when it launched. We were still in college. It kind of carried us through our years in Chicago and working in advertising. Clearly it influenced us. For me personally, I started with Sopranos like right when it came out, when I was like 16 years old. I remember like renting the VHSs from the local library. So my Sopranos lineage goes back to kind of day one with all that. And it more than shaped my little 16-year-old brain in probably a bunch of awful ways. But,
yeah. That's all of the information and all the stimuli that you really want getting in there at that age.
Yeah. While that cement's really starting to settle, we want stuff like University really just bubbling in this brain.
Right.
Really
That's how we want to shape your personality.
Yeah.
No, it's terrifying. That is terrifyingly accurate, because me and Mike met our first day of film school when we were 18. Actually, through I said a Simpsons quote, or you said a Simpsons quote, and we're like,
it was him.
Did you just... But I was like you. I literally didn't finish Sopranos until maybe like a year ago. Like right, yeah, I hadn't even finished it when we started this podcast.
Right.
But I'd watched Mad Men like 10 times through. And finishing Sopranos, I was like, how do I know all of these like facial like displays and mannerisms and like responses? I was like, oh, this is how Mike acts. I was like, I think Michael, he may be an amalgamation of like his upbringing, but then also a heavy dose of Tony Soprano, and then on top of that.
It's mostly Tony. There's a little dash of Don in there. I made a comment the other day when I was talking to my wife and my other buddy on a text thread, and I was like, I feel like my personality is like 50% my dad and then like 10% my own, and then the other 40% is just like 4 different characters kind of thrown in there. I think one of them's Tony.
A lot of people too.
One of them's Tony. One of them is just Jack Nicholson as a person. The other is Charlton Heston from Planet of the Apes. And then a little dash of Homer in there too.
I'm sure your wife is thrilled with all of these reference points.
She knew who I was when she married me. So,
yes.
But let's go ahead and dive right in, man. Christian, do you want to kick us off here? We're going to do a little round robin, do something a little bit different than we normally do. And
yeah.
Would you like to kick us off here? What are some similarities you picked up on between these 2 episodes?
So we go in chronological order?
One.
Yeah, whatever you want to do, right? You can do chronological, you can do a big overarching theme. It's up to you.
Okay. All right. I got to think.
We normally like to start small and kind of like be like, all right, I found this cool one, and then we try to save like our really
right. Yeah. All right. I'll save my heavy hitter for later then. I did think that even these were both, I know we're dealing with an underground crime mafia show for one of them, so there's an asterisk by this, but even by those standards, these both seem to be uniquely violent episodes for their the context of their like respective arc.
Christian, let me just catch you up to things that we've just established so far doing this podcast. The idea of getting fired in Mad Men is the same as getting whacked in Sopranos. Yeah.
Right. And you get the same, like this, in the sort of like peak violence scene in the Mad Men corollary, with the, I forget who's riding the lawnmower around.
It's the secretary. It's the secretary.
Right.
It's the worst secretary.
Yeah, it's not Cosgrove. He like kind of introduces the mechanism, but
he comes in with it, and then the little the little writer guy is riding it with the secretary. Then they switch, and she's the one that can't control it.
Right. Yeah. So this is happening in the context, I believe, if memory serves, of Joan isn't getting fired, but she's leaving, and this feels like the corollary of the sort of like very violent departure of Tracy.
Yeah.
And sort of like at the hands of this kind of like looming external force that is kind of besting these 2 families kind of on both sides of the aisle. You have kind of like Ralphie kind of coming in and kind of like calling the shots and like disrupting, like when he's like going in the back room of the club and he's like drunk and harassing people, and these are people who are so normally in control of everything, and like people take orders for them, but they kind of have to acquiesce to this guy because he's such a good earner, and they don't really have control over the situation. And then he brings violence to them, like on their own property. And you have these people in like in the firm who are
the pound low.
Yeah, they're so used to kind of like running this industry at the sort of peak of it on their own terms, and now you have this external force coming from a different country, trying like disrupting how they're doing things, and they can't really control the situation. And so all of this kind of feels like wrapped up in the same theme.
Yeah, and both of them ending in extreme violence. Getting back to your point a few minutes ago, I could argue that each of these episodes contain the most extreme example of violence for either run of either show.
Right.
Like even there's the only thing on Mad Men I could equate this to would be when Lane hangs himself, but even then you don't see it. You don't have it go down. You just find the body. We have the foot getting cut off. There's really no other violence in the history of the show you can think of. Over on Sopranos, you have a bunch of other people get killed, but it's never in this brutal of a way.
I know, you're just living in that moment for so long.
They're not pregnant.
Yeah. So, as we kicked off this original show and this idea, Chris and I joked around about, like how long are we going to go through this till we just run out of things?
Right.
Till the gimmick just runs out, and then you and I move on to a different project. Well, here we are in season 6, episode 3, and we still just keep getting, we hit the paramount of violence in one show. Oh, we hit the paramount in violence on the other show. Oh, and it's on a woman, and it's on a woman, and then it's like you said, external factors, and they just start to pile up.
Yeah, they just like unfold on themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I have a fun one that I hope you guys didn't notice because I'm competitive. At the beginning of Sopranos, there's a song playing, and the lyric says, "There's no England now."
Oh, good one.
That's really
Like,
good.
Yeah.
what the
I did not think of
fuck?
that. Yeah.
And that's the closing song too. Yeah.
And and
Yeah.
and and you're telling
Really good.
me they screen this for the cast and crew, and then they're like, you know what? Maybe I don't know. I just feel like the guys from England should come by.
That's a
Yeah.
What do you
really,
think?
really good one. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that band is entire like their kind of like mythology that's like wrapped into all of their songwriting is reflecting on the history of England and the sort of like how it used to be the sort of like dominant force in the world, and there was a kind of romantic charm to their reflection on it. And it's kind of like an era of days gone. And that song in their career is like after they were even relevant. Like that's just like a Kink song from like the 80s, you know? Like that's like
Yeah.
so
Interesting.
it just like feels so like it's even like a meta commentary on this theme that they were even reflecting on the time. And so what you even have in this show is England trying to assert its own dominance and sort of its right to sort of be superior to these kind of like young American kids.
The British
Yeah,
are coming.
yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Wow.
Wow, that's fantastic.
You just incepted us.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you got, Mike?
I got a couple little things here. So each show has also a young character cut down in their prime
Yeah.
who's introduced in
I
this
would argue
episode.
beautiful character.
Yes, yeah. We're multiple characters, other characters comment on how beautiful this character is. Being, this is the first time we've met them. They come in, they're put on this pedestal for their beauty, and then they're both whacked by the end of this. The other little thing I had was really getting back to just an overarching theme of like uncertain women in both of these episodes. You have Meadow and Tracy and their arc that goes through, and then you have Joan and Sally as also just this. They're really meandering. None of those four women have a path forward in either episode, and that's really prevalent as we go on.
Yeah, that is a good one. Yeah, and did you so on Meadow specifically, I think like a big part of her like uncertainty and her her just feeling unsure of her position. I think there's a lot that's reflected in there. That's sort of like how I thought of it in terms of these are two narratives that are following characters that feel like gate kept from status, and so you feel Meadow very kind of like uncomfortable sitting at the dinner table with Noah and her father, and they're asking her like, "Oh, what does your father do?" Which is like kind of the entry level question to like, and she has to sort of like sheepishly say waste management, which kind of like keeps her at a lower sphere, and then.
Hold on, I got a question for you regarding that. Do you think that they took that face value and were like, "Oh, your dad's a garbage man, like peace out, loser," or did they see through it and be like, "Oh, she's the daughter of a mobster. You should not be with her anymore"?
The way that and I could be off on this, but the way it landed for me is just, well, you didn't say something that impressed me. And so I'm not going to take you seriously. And I didn't really bother thinking that much more deeply into what did you mean by that? Do you mean, because I think if they did, as I'm sort of unfolding this now, I think if they did, or at the very least, if Noah did understand that to mean what it actually means, he would not have proceeded to be the specific kind of shit he was to her, like at the end of the episode. Which
hold on, I'm gonna stop you. I'm gonna stop you right there because there is an interaction between Meadow and Carmela where Carmela asks Meadow, "Are you being discreet about your family to Noah?"
Sure.
And then she says something along the lines of like, "Look, Noah's smart. It took him a while, but he figured it out."
Right.
So in that scene, Noah knows by now that Tony's a mobster, and he still proceeds to act as he does.
Was that in a previous episode? Or
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that obviously that changes what I'm about to say. But what I was on the way to saying is kind of building off of the point that I started to make initially, which is it's been established that whoever you are is not impressive to me or my family. And you will never understand why a C or whatever he got in his grade was just unacceptable to me, because we have plans for my future and now I'm not living up to them. I guess you wouldn't understand that because I wouldn't expect you to. And
you don't have expectations of yourself.
Exactly. And you see something vaguely similar play out with Joan being gatekept from status because she's taking the risk of leaving this job that she feels very comfortable and confident in. It's her world, because she's, for the sake of marrying a doctor, to sort of elevate her to, I guess, a different sphere of society. And then that doesn't really pan out. And then she's left thinking, okay, well, what does this really mean for me? Yeah.
Christian, I think your assessment is correct. I think if you're reading this episode, face value, like feel value, you're like, no, they're just shitty classist, snooty assholes. But you got Michael over here, who's a savant, has seen every episode 20 times. You're like, fuck.
Yeah, I did not have that as fresh in my head. Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're both right.
No, I agree. And then now I'm sitting here thinking about Meadow and Joan and how both of their lives are tangled with these men and their status. And how at the end Meadows kind of left on her, she's dumped and left on her own without him, but Joan's also on her own with him. Like he's
he's not doing her any favors at this point.
No, he's dead weight in a lot of ways, and he's proven himself to be awful.
So I have to share a similarity I found here because you guys are talking about it. I said that both episodes have every male partner doing the shittiest option in their playbook.
Elaborate on that.
Okay.
So the shittiest thing that Meadow's boyfriend could do is like, break up with her in like a kind of mean way. He's not going to beat her up. He's not going to, do something truly horrible.
Yeah.
The shittiest thing that I can't remember his name, Dr. Loser Jones' fiance husband.
Greg.
The shittiest thing Greg
Bad
can
guy
do.
Greg.
Yeah. The shittiest thing Greg can do is at her moment of triumph, she's left the secretary job she's had for 11 years or whatever. He's like, well, you have to go get another job. There's nothing worse.
On top of that, like he's not going to be what he sold her on. Oh, not only do you have to go back to work, but I'm never going to be the thing I told you I was about to be.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And the promises that are kind of entangled in that.
Yeah. Like you said, getting up into that doctor world, getting up into that elevated status. Now that's off the table.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And obviously, I can't imagine Ralphie doing anything worse than what he did.
No, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good one.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I like that.
Oh God. And it plays so much more devastatingly directly off of the back of his kind of doing this.
Yes.
Like I'm playing this character of who you think you want me to be.
Breaks your fucking heart. It breaks your heart only to elicit a slight laugh from me because they used like a comedic punch sound.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
I was like, oh, and then I was like, was that the punch sound from like Three Stooges? What the fuck was that?
She like falls with a Wilhelm scream.
When she finally gets knocked over, you hear like the whoopity of like the moving feet on a banana peel and goes down. Dude, that's an edit we should do. We should go back and add in like cartoon sound effects to the brutal beatings on
Sopranos for kids.
Yeah, and a laugh track to it.
This you can show you to your 16-year-old without any consequences.
Yeah. Well, look, we've talked about this on the show before. I'm at least waiting till my oldest daughter's 8 before really letting her dive into the Sopranos. I got to show some discretion here.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Christian, that's a question for you. So I watched Aliens and Jason at least 10 times before like my 7th birthday. I saw Alien 3 it came out on my birthday. I saw it either, I can't remember, for my 7th or 8th birthday. Well, what is your feeling? Did you watch horrible movies that early? If you had kids, would you make them wait?
So I didn't. I just I didn't really have the stomach for it, and I knew that. I'm sure there was things that I just kind of like that crossed my field of vision like against my will. I like had an older brother, and so that was like going to happen. But
I was the older brother.
Sorry,
I was that older brother.
Oh yeah, yeah. So
you're
made
watching
sure that
this,
happened.
John.
Yeah. If I had kids, what would I sort of like subject them to? I'd it wouldn't be sort of like top on my list to do, but I feel like I would be tempted to have fun with it just to see, okay, like how's this going to play? Because so much of parenthood just feels like, all right, it's like, it all feels like a live experiment. I wonder how this one's going to go.
I just had these kids, so I had someone to mess with all the time, like my dad did. I'm just here to poke you in the ribs constantly.
Right.
I'm paying all these bills and I'm doing all this junk. I'm going to at least have some fun with you.
Yeah, I got to get something else. Yeah. Well, which ones have you tried? You said you're waiting on The Sopranos. Which ones have you tried so far?
Well, right now, my girls are really into pro wrestling.
Okay.
With the Rock has come back in the last year, and I'm a wrestling fan, so I've been watching that, and they've gotten really into it.
I heard there's a big plot twist with him that's going on right now.
Well,
right?
John Cena has been a good guy for 25 years, and now John Cena is Darth Vader to the Rock's emperor. And he turned heel last week. So,
I've seen the cultural reaction to it.
Yeah. So that really threw a monkey wrench into things. I do show my girls a lot of The Simpsons. Because even as a kid, even if they don't get a lot of the jokes, I want them watching something that's elevated, that's smart. I don't allow any
burn
kind of
it into them
cartoons. I'll let them watch Lord of the Rings. I'll let them watch any kind of that stuff that piques their interest that we're flipping through and watching. They've watched chunks of Dark Knight Rises. I haven't let them watch Dark Knight. Creepy Clown might be a bit too much.
Right.
The one with the guy in the mask and Catwoman they like.
Right.
I'm just kind of sprinkling stuff along the road, and like you said, see if they follow it or not, and see see what that reaction is like.
Yeah, if we're counting just general, like possibly like age inappropriate like humor, I definitely just grew up with like The Simpsons being injected into my veins, and that is something that with my nephews and niece, when I was around like middle school and the oldest was born. And so I was never going to change the channel if they were like around and I was watching that. So I just like, when they asked what this was, I said, this is a show called The Silly People. And any time they like went home to their mom, they would just say like, oh, we were watching The Silly People today or whatever. Silly People. And so, and like
smart.
I would want to like guide their like to that. I don't know that it ever fully congealed or was saturated, but that was something that I was like trying to nurture and encourage.
It's a good start. I like that. Chris and I believe it's back to you. Do you have any other ones you want to point out?
I thought Chris, you
Chris? Who's up?
Yeah, it's Chris. Chris.
Sure, I'll go. Let me see. I got a couple other small ones, but I gotta jump out and grab this one. Both episodes have great sets.
Well, yeah, I felt a lot of people really commend Mad Men on their art direction. Set pieces. I imagine
great. Okay, you're telling me we've been watching Joan for 3 seasons, and Sopranos happens to premiere. I would argue their greatest bear asset so far in the season, in the series. Okay, and then they watch
another pinnacle for Sopranos in this episode.
The cast and crew watch of Mad Men, watch Sopranos. They're like, damn, that was a killer set. And then Joan is crying and upset. They're like, Joan, you wouldn't be wearing a dress in this scene. You got anything that's like, we're on AMC, so we can't go full frontal. But you got anything that's like a little bit closer to this? She's like, no, just the thing. So we get the first like deep V on Joan, while in Sopranos we're getting the best. You're okay. And I'll say this. My wife typically watches these with me, and if I write something that's remotely offensive, she reads it. She goes, "What the hell is that?" So I wrote, both episodes have great.
And then she's going through the notes. She's like, "Oh, I approve. Yes. Very nice. Yes.
Very tasteful sets.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Great.
Beautiful set.
Good one, Chris. That's a strong one. It's pretty
Chris,
good.
Maybe I was actually thinking what you were thinking. when I wrote this, but I said that both episodes, there's conversations around cake. There's Tracy and her cake, and then Joan and her cake at her party. So maybe I was subconsciously thinking sets, but I landed on cake.
Yes, sweet cakes for all.
Indeed.
All right.
Let me see here. I just want to talk about some things that I like in these episodes, and a little theory that I have. I have a theory that David Chase or someone on the writing staff hates the movie Gladiator and hated it when it came out, and that's why the most repulsive character on the show can't stop talking about Gladiator.
I can see
because they saw that movie and they're like, I fucking hate Gladiator. This is stupid. Who on earth would like this? Oh, this idiot
probably
that I'm
also,
writing right now.
I think that's probably really good. It also seems like a movie like people in that world, like certain ones would get like really excited by. And then also, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I feel like that is a movie that like it's a certain kind of person, and it's very common, will have like disproportionate enthusiasm for. And I feel that someone who is just like the part of their personality is how excited they are about movies and how sort of seriously they take cinema, they would have like a specific visceral negative reaction to just like all of the fanfare around that movie. And it's like, of course this guy would like it. This would probably be his favorite fucking movie. And he probably would have such a like confused reaction to something like Spartacus too.
Yeah. But he's not
Does-
wrong. He's right. They didn't have flat tops in ancient Rome. That's a great observation. Like,
how does
that
fit into the theory? Does that mean David Chase likes Spartacus?
I don't think he likes Spartacus either. I just think it's a continuation of this or he does like Spartacus, and that's the one thing that he thinks like Ralphie would get caught up on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how I took it too.
Yeah, but it's
You're
like
missing the point of
actual...
this movie.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair.
On a second note related to that, the first time he shows up at the strip club VIP party, when he ends up whacking Georgie with the thing, the first time, not the second time later on. Watching Ralphie go in there and insult everybody and then whack Georgie, I was watching this being like, I don't see what's wrong with Ralphie's behavior. He looks like he's having a great time. Like,
it's all working for Ralphie.
If Georgie wasn't such a crybaby, everyone would have had a great time. Come on, dude, pull it together.
Listen, he's got another eye.
Yeah, I know, right? He shouldn't have been standing there.
Give you two eyes. God gave you two eyes and one mouth for a reason. Stop running.
Yeah, well put. Well put. Another little thing I had. Roger's story about his drunk father dying and getting his arm severed off. Is that foreshadowing for the foot getting cut off 15 minutes later?
Oh, that's a good question. I was actually thinking the same thing for Cooper. Sort of like tells them to both get a shave, and then you see like the lawnmower like motif going through. And I was trying to kind of make sense of like before this call, like, oh wait, I hadn't noticed that until like 15 minutes ago. I wonder what that kind of means, but I hadn't really gotten to a satisfying answer quite yet. But I do think that was very deliberate and intentional.
No, Michael, I think that's, you know, to further cement in the viewer's mind that like this loss of a limb is the equivalent to death, and it's like, yeah, no, I never connected that. That's a great connection. That like
they all feel connected, kind of just like cutting something down, either necessity for grooming for presentation or just against your will.
Yeah.
But it's also still in the world of marketing, and in this advertising world, and someone getting, you know, like you said, Chris, cut down, cut in half. It's a story of dismemberment in this world.
Sure.
In death, or you're just fired, which is your death.
Sure. Yeah.
Either way, you end up cast out.
Right. You in the more violent cases, the more negative ones, or in the positive ones, you lose the version of yourself that you were.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. I also thought that this is like a little bit more minor, but this is one of the cluster of episodes where you'll see Carmela in Melfi's office with Tony, when it's that little sort of like stretch where you're kind of going a little bit more explicitly and directly under the hood of like their interpersonal problems when that's played alongside Don and Roger having a riff and having to kind of like
oh yeah, they have to go to their
and their own relationship and like corollary marriage. Yeah,
I like that. Yeah,
that's probably the closest thing to couples therapy for two business partners.
Come on,
go get a shave.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good point. Christian, that's great. That really goes along with the theme of this show. Like, we think, maybe a tenth of these similarities that we find are conscious, and we think that the other 90% are not on purpose, but we do think that clearly these episodes were shown to the cast and crew, and it's like it's either it's there, the connection is there, it's hard to deny.
Especially after as long as we've been doing this and as many as we found. And like back to Chris's point, that sometimes this becomes a discussion of like, what is even the nature of coincidence?
Sure.
Like, what is even, I remember watching a video a while back where this guy broke down how in Back to the Future Part 2, when they go into like 2015 and they're in the McFly's future living room, like they're watching something on the screen and there's like a footage of the Twin Towers. And then in 2015, in like that same month, Robert Zemeckis puts out a movie about a guy walking across the Twin Towers.
Oh yeah, that is.
And it's like, and they're like, and this whole thing is like, what is even the nature of coincidence? Robert Zemeckis put his future movie in the movie about time travel that he made 30 years before he made it.
Exactly, and it's like that. It's so hard to imagine that being intentional because you have to plan out so far in advance if that movie is going to be released on the same time that would have been like predicted, But
we like to think we like to think that each episode of this that Matt Weiner listens to, he gets a kick out of it. He's not like offended. He like we like to think that he realizes like, oh shit, I was not conscious of that, but I think they might be right about a couple of
Or there's the flip side of that where he took the entire map of the Sopranos, did a little post-it note about the 3 things that were in each episode that worked, and then he's like, here's my map.
Yeah, there's a number of these because candidly, I've listened to a lot of your show and I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed going through it. And there are absolutely times where I think it's really hard for me to imagine that would not have been intentional. That feels very direct. And as you've pointed out, that they, as a writer's room, were using Sopranos as a blueprint. And it's hard to imagine that with that just vaguely in mind, that some of these similarities that are so stark wouldn't have been intentional. And there are others that feel like it falls in this area of, well, you're working on this show, Mad Men, because you have been identified to have the sensibility that will be kind of like reflective of, like, I'm Matthew Weiner, I'm staffing in my room. We know we kind of like read and reflect things the same way. We respond to things in the same way. We're probably kind of emotionally, intellectually moved by similar issues that we're kind of framing that first arc of shows. And so we will just gravitate to the themes that we're going to go back to the same narrative just in an abstract sense, while we're making this one. And so that kind of is intentional, but it's also not like, well, I wanted these episodes to explicitly mirror, and this is a way we can do it with these characters. I think that there are it's not exactly coincidence, but it's also not exactly by intention or device or design.
Well put.
Yeah, and I've made this point multiple times on the show that's why I would argue Mad Men to me is slightly better than Sopranos, because they had the guardrails in there, like they had the template, they had the blueprint. They could spend more time focused on performance or the sets. They could spend more time
dressing up the sets,
making those sets look just absolutely out of this world.
This is coming on the heels of the last episode, The Fog on Mad Men, where Betty, she's having that dream where she's having the kid and she's walking down like the CGI street. And the question Chris and I posed last week were like, is this the most beautiful a woman has ever looked on? Like, oh my God.
Chris, have you revised your answer?
My answer was yes.
Yeah, okay. My answer was yes too. And I'm not even a blonde guy.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Whose turn is it?
I think
Is
it's
it
yours.
Michael's?
It's Christian. Yep.
It's me?
Yeah.
Okay. I did the spousal tension thing. But there's also a different kind of spousal tension that happens between not as much directly between the spouses themselves, but with a sort of a looming father figure. You have Meadow sort of having friction with Noah's dad and his kind of like putting a block between the closeness that they can experience. And then you have this sort of continuation of the narrative of like, how long does Don have to deal with Betty's father? And like, our baby is named after him, and it's disrupting our daughter's life. And when I try to bring your attention to that, you're insisting that I like can't let this go, and like I can't with my father, or like
okay, I got a question. I got a follow-up question for that. Is Betty doing this out of love for her father or spite Don?
Both. It's both.
Yeah, it doesn't seem mutually exclusive. Yeah. This is my way of assuming some sort of control over you because you're always playing by your rules. Yeah.
Let's one up that and let's go back over to Sopranos. You have a lot of friction between. Oh my God, I just went blank. I'm sorry. With the mother, the father-daughter relationship dynamic between Tracy and Tony that starts to emerge, and her looking for that guidance. Over on Mad Men, you start to see it at the end of this episode with the emergence of Conrad Hilton and the fatherhood, the fatherly player he ends up being for Don over the course of season 3.
Right. Yeah.
So now we have like 4 different strained parental-ish relationships between these two shows, really establishing itself and really blossoming in this episode.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good one.
If it's my turn, I have another one. I want to start off with when they cast the strippers for this episode of The Sopranos in the beginning, where they're like, we're looking for dejected strippers. Yeah, that last group we had come in here were pretty good. We need dejected strippers. I need dejected looking strippers.
Like twinkle in those eyes.
Did anyone catch the most recent episode of Botched? Yeah, give me those.
Yeah.
With the real hard, weird boobs.
It's 1998 fake. It couldn't be more circular and weird.
Right.
Fully calcified.
Yeah. But the similarity I got between the 2 episodes was both episodes start with a dejected staff. We open on the strippers dancing. They're looking how they're looking. We open over on Mad Men with the entire staff getting word that the British are coming and that they have to work on the 4th of July. So right off the bat, we have these 2 groups who are miserable in their jobs, and that's our path forward.
Okay, I got the exact same opening, just maybe even more specific. I said both episodes open with scared young girls. Sally screaming and Tracy bringing Tony like a please God help me cake.
Yeah. Good one.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Screaming to their dads too.
Going to their fatherly character for guidance and protection.
Yeah,
that is really good.
Yeah, thanks.
Really good. On a side note, I feel like I've dated like 5 different Caitlins at some point in my life.
Who's
Caitlin's the roommate who just keeps crumbling.
Bro, she looks like Allie.
I've thought that too. I've thought that more than once. But if you just make her hair red, that's definitely a woman I dated for like a year and a half.
Okay. Speaking of crazy roommates, I have both episodes have storylines revolving around unwell women. I have Sally with Betty, who's just like not understanding what she's struggling with, and obviously Meadow and her roommate. Well, actually, there's a lot of unwell women in this. Tracy, stripper, Joan.
Yeah.
But specifically, you know, if we're talking roommates,
the people you share close quarters with.
Like Sally with Betty, who's never been well, and then Meadow with her clearly unwell roommate.
What's the more brutal moment in that Sopranos episode, when Tracy gets beaten to death, or when you see that homeless woman with the New York Times up her butt? It's a coin flip for me.
Right. Just ask Caitlin.
Just ask Caitlin.
Well, I lived in Los Angeles for 3 years, so I'm desensitized to the newspaper up the butt.
My favorite part about that is right afterwards.
That's how I get all my news.
Where she's having the meltdown in their dorm room, and they're like, "Why don't you go down to the doctors and they'll give you something to calm down?" She's like, no more drugs, and just starts pouring this huge thing of vodka. I'm like, yeah, I'll drink to that, sweetheart.
And like vaguely on that note of sort of relationships in close quarters, I think that both episodes did have a sort of struggled and fraught tension or relations between mothers and daughters. I think that with Betty, when she's trying to console Sally, she says something like in very kind of like true to that character, who like doesn't really offer a lot of herself emotionally, specifically to her daughter throughout the show. She says, like, you are very important to me too. Like, Jean, like my father's important to me. Like, Jean's important to me. I know you're jealous of the baby, but you're important to me too. But she doesn't say, I love you. Like, that's what a mother is, just second nature is to say to a daughter who's feeling alone and scared and feeling devalued. You can't even use that word for your child. And in your firstborn child too, your firstborn daughter. And this is not exactly the same, but you'll see that when Meadow goes home from college and is kind of trying to share and connect with her mom, she pulls back. She stops just short of just saying how close things are or how quickly things have unfolded with Noah. She says, we're not having this conversation.
She even asked her, are you in love with this boy?
She avoids that word. And then she said, the most she says is, well, I better be. And she says, well, why is that? And it's showing that closeness that you're seeking with me now, I'm putting up a wall against that. And so you're
even though I'm here looking for your guidance and love, I'm still going to put up a wall here.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's kind of a reverse thing. I even think when I go back and watch that whole scene feels to me like it's Betty handling Sally the way Betty would handle herself, and going and getting a toy and, oh, here you go. Everything's fine now.
Right.
And she, more to your point, she doesn't know how to actually make that direct connection and say, I love you, and actually, make her feel better. It's, here's a thing and everything's fine. And now go play with thing.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's echoed throughout the series. And it just, for my first, the only time I went through Mad Men front to back, I remember for a very long time, Betty was a character that I struggled with the most, struggled to feel the most kind of interested, invested in, and connected to. And I was just so blown away by her final scene in her letter to Sally, which I think is exactly to the point that you just made. It is her version of giving motherly loving advice, but it's really, the sentiment of it is close yourself off to the world. The most important thing is presentation. It is carrying yourself in the right way. And this is this is the closest to sort of like tools of navigating and getting through life that I can give you, because this is all I've ever done for myself. I'm choosing to die rather than go through chemo, because that's like, presentation is that important to me.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, a previous episode, we pointed out her alluding to that ending for herself. I forget exactly what she said, but she's like, no, I'd rather die than not be this vision.
And just a few episodes before this, with her father and then the arrangements that he makes, he's trying to talk to her about, oh, well, here's the paperwork and here's this and that, and she won't even engage with him on that. And she's like, we shouldn't even be talking about this. I'm your little girl. and walls herself off even from that moment when he's coming to her and saying, I'm on my way out. This is our chance to set things right in some way and to have a moment here. And she cuts him off at that too. That is very consistent. You know, if nothing else, she is the ice queen all the way to the end.
And you're seeing it's not because you see, especially at the very end, it's not because I haven't thought about this. This has all been very deliberate and very calculated. This is built into a very a much more nuanced and deep running character than I feel like suggests for itself throughout a lot of the show.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I'll put.
Okay, I got one. Both episodes have huge promises and new beginnings. Dawn with moving to London and Trace having a family together.
Yeah, buy a house and all that stuff. Yeah, no, that's really good too.
Yeah, that is a good
cross that one off my list.
Sorry.
I think Ralphie gets the best lines in this episode. I love when he walks into Georgie and he's like, and Georgie's like, oh, what are you even talking about? He's like, it's from Gladiator, you fuck. And Georgie's like, oh, I haven't seen it. And he's just like, you're an asshole then. And then the other one about that Maltasanti kid's got his head up his ass. He thinks this is a good Gladiator movie.
He talks about it like they're all part of the same franchise.
Yeah. Like it's the prequel.
Right.
They all just take place in the same world.
Okay, if we're talking great lines, you know, like say what you want about the writing for Mad Men, the writing for Sopranos. Like obviously it's top tiers, top shelf. You can't write better than that. But like this line that I love, that's one of my favorite lines in all of Mad Men. Like the actor elevates it beyond anything anyone could ever write. It's that scene. Everybody's drinking champagne. The British are there. Everybody's happy, and Peggy goes, "Oh, you know this is good champagne." And Don just goes, "I don't think so."
Yeah.
Like what the fuck?
I like that a lot too.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't either.
There are a couple other moments that come to mind in this series. Where Don or Roger specifically deliver a line, like you said, that is so far beyond anything that was written on the page,
right?
That it really transcends it. There's one that reminds me of it. It comes at the beginning of season 4, I think, between Don and Betty and the new husband, and they're going back and forth about being with the kids, and Don delivers a line where he's just like, because you're so good with them. That's how he delivers that. It is burned into my skull. And I know I've said that at least 10 times since I've had these kids and my wife, where she's going off on something. I'm just like, why? Because you're so good with them.
Right. Yeah. You even delivered that. No, I can hear his voice doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are.
And that scene even ends with him saying goodbye in a way that I can't replicate. Like they both leave the room. And he's just like, goodbye.
Yeah, I feel that way about his little interaction with Ginsburg too, when he when he kind of like steals his idea in the meeting and he kind of confronts him on it, and he's kind of the closest thing to like a moral center in that entire world, you know.
That
he's
time,
and the best he can do, because he knows that he has no leverage or power, is just say like, I feel bad for you. And he just always says, I don't think about you at all. And that is such a devastating line, but it goes, as you said, so much farther than what you see in the words on the page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And since you've watched a couple episodes of this, you know, our theory is that they probably planned to kill off Roger in season 1 when he had that heart attack. Mm-hmm. But kind of like the guy who plays Uncle Junior on The Sopranos, no one reads this dialogue better, so we can't get rid of him.
Right.
He's so great. He's so charming.
So charismatic.
Like, we can't get rid of him. There was one time I was talking with my wife about this show, and she was like, I think Roger's like one of the few good people on the show. And I go, no, he's not at all. Not. He's so charming and so good. You've overlooked everything. It just goes straight to charisma. It is straight to personality. No, here's the 10 reasons he's not good at all.
You really just feel like he was like a sacrificial lamb. Like he was gonna be the old guard, the useless person they just put out to pasture. Like he doesn't really, like, they have Cooper. Like he's the wise elder. Like
Yeah.
Roger, I mean, even in the show, they're like they must have at some point in the writers' room been like, this guy's too fucking good. He says our lines too damn well. Like we can't get rid of him. We have nothing for him to do essentially.
Everyone loves him.
But
Well,
we
I
have
think,
to keep him
they
around.
make that into a strength because he doesn't really know his place, and he's it feels like he's kind of like fucking around for a lot of it, and because he just doesn't know, and that becomes a source of conflict for him. He doesn't really know what his identity is and what to do with himself.
Yeah, they easily just wrote that in. Like we don't know what to do with him. Well, he doesn't know what to do either.
Right, which is
has
like
one client.
Makes for a very interesting problem for a character.
Yeah, and they even reference it multiple times. Like, you have one client. What are you doing all the time? I think he even says in this episode when he's left off the board, he's like, I'm being punished for making my job look easy. And Cooper's just gonna look at him like, what are you doing now? Like, what is it that you're working on?
Right.
What's your the one? Don't you have a martini lunch to go to?
Right. But yeah, I think that's totally true because the alternative is what we kill him off and then we know what we had there. So what do we do? Like flashback sequences for him for like 7 years? Like no.
Yeah. And to Cooper's point, even in this episode, he's like, make up. Everyone wants Laurel and Hardy again.
Right. Yeah.
Even as the audience, we want that too. We like seeing them go off on adventures and have their banter and find their way through things. It's fun for us. Oh, Chris, this episode has one of our other most quoted lines, and that's from the British guy, and he's like, Rob, that made the rounds for a couple years when we were in Chicago.
Roommates in Chicago would just be ripped out of our minds watching Mad Men like nonstop. I think we rewound that scene a couple times. Like, bro, we gotta watch this again.
Yeah. Go back. The British guy says bravo right there.
Is that what I bet that sounds like something that's like you can probably find like a 3-second clip on YouTube that has like 2 million views of people just like hitting that.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about the like, hey Pete, how you doing? Not great, Bob. Like,
that's another like line that's elevated. There's a clearly like Chinese website.
Bob.
There's a clearly Chinese website that I use called Yarn that is like clipped every single like Sopranos and Mad Men. And if you search, you can find the individual like line each time.
I've leaned on that for so many Seinfeld clips. I want to send that in a text or something.
Like clearly there's just like there's just like one room worth of like slaves somewhere that just it was their job to chop that up.
Yeah, that's true. Like I've never really thought that deeply about it, but there's so many times that I've thought like I've said to Chris in the past, like the way that you guys are about Mad Men and Sopranos, Joe and I are about Seinfeld and like to a lesser extent like Simpsons and Curb. And there's so many times where it's like you said something that's making me think of this incredibly specific.
I need that thing.
Nobody else has noticed, but let me see if I can find it. And it's always on Yarn.
Yeah. Have you been on the website Frinkiac?
I know about it. Yeah.
Yeah. That just has the entire Simpsons thing, and you can pull in clips and change the stuff.
Yeah.
I can't believe I've been wanting to like reach out to the people who run Frinkiac and be like, what's the back end that you have? Because I just want to go make it for Sopranos. I want to go make it for like you said, why isn't there like a Seinfeld Frinkiac?
Right.
And make it that just like a franchise. You can't tell me you can get traffic and stuff off that.
Yeah, there's a demand for it.
Yeah. There's enough autists out there swapping stuff around. I should be able to make $100 a month off this thing.
Yeah. That's the next venture.
Yeah. I've had worse ideas. Oh, the last similarity I have is that each episode involves a woman wearing pink drenched in blood. We have one of the women on staff gets it in the Mad Men thing. Over on Sopranos, we have Tracy wearing pink when she gets beat up. I think the woman in pink and clearly the guy McKendrick is a JFK allegory.
Mm-hmm.
Still the pink connects there.
Right. Yeah, that is good. I had totally missed that one too.
Mm-hmm.
You have this young man, he's the leader. Maybe he's a little bit more styled in substance. He's been elevated, and then an accident takes place, and now he's done.
Right. Yeah. And
at the end, there's just a woman drenched in pink, or drenched in blood, wearing pink, and they're all mourning his death.
Right.
That's JFK. And that happens in what, 2 or 3 months here on the show?
All that happened to JFK was his head exploded from 3 different directions.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had never thought of that. And that's interesting in imagining such a sort of like specifically, explicitly identifiably English character as that very classical American icon. And I think that you could also make the case for like an inverse of the Kennedy family. They just
Camelot.
They always feel like American version of royalty, you know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And a sort of like a very sort of like intentional lineage that's sort of at least that was intended for them, you know, that was supposed to be like royalty for generations.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, you know, they even say in the hospital scene at the very end, like, you know, he was going to be this, he was going to be that, he was going to be this, and now he'll never golf again. Okay?
He can't even golf.
That's the most tragic element. Yeah.
I got a hard out in just a few minutes here, guys.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah,
well, this was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing this.
Christian, this is great. Come back and join us anytime, man.
I would love to. Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, please do.
Awesome.
Yeah. Maybe come back and you do want to come back and maybe plan on joining us for the season 3 finale here in a few weeks?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, let's do that. Let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think a lot of stuff goes down here.
Yeah, sign me up.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. Christian, so much for joining us in your first episode. Apologies to Matt Weiner.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Everybody have a good one.
All right. See you later.